Chapter 1.4, Color. So if we think about color, right, as being the most vivid element of art, right? So color is an element of art. Really going to talk about the idea of how color attracts our attention. It really excites our emotions. So not only do we kind of respond to the things differently, right? Personality and mood vary from person to person. So when we're looking at color, right, our perceptions of color are also going to vary, right? And so, for example, we've been taught different color associations, right? When you think of the color red, we associate it to maybe love, maybe anger, right? But then for some people, the color red could cause some sort of emotion, or there's something that personally they are attracted to or drawn to, or it affects them, right? And so, like, for me, yellow gives me anxiety, right? And so, but other people will be like, "Ooh, yellow is a happy color." So these perceptions could be personal or subjective, right? So if you think about, the different phenomena of these feelings that we have and that are direct and deep, right? If you think about an artist using color, right? And if he's really focusing on this kind of psychological science behind it and trying to make us feel a certain way, right? This is what we're going to talk about as far as when we talk about color associations and why some artists use certain colors, right? Because they're trying to kind of play with our psyche, make us feel a certain way, create a certain emotion, right? And so we want to look at stuff like that. So one of the things that we do have to kind of talk about really quick is the color wheel, right? So color wheels have been used by artists for since the 18th century, right? So scientists and color theories. So there is some science behind color, and it'll be important when we start talking about these different subtractive and additive colors and the different color schemes, right? And so this would be a color wheel if you've never seen one, right? And so when we start looking at the different color schemes, right, these are going to be important. We're going to have to look at this, right? So just kind of introducing you to the color wheel. But with these color wheels, it'll help us understand these two different color schemes, which is complementary colors and analogous colors, right? And so these two are very different. And so when an artist uses a certain color scheme, they're sometimes doing it intentionally, and they're trying to create a certain feel for the artwork, right? So when we think about complementary colors, these are colors that are opposite of each other in the color wheel. And so when they're mixed together, they intensify, right? So if you have like a green and a red next to each other, they're going to, side by side, they're going to intensify each other. And the wavelengths that are different also kind of create this illusion of these vibrations on the edges, right? Because they're so different and they sit on the opposite side of the color wheel. So for example, if we see red here, the opposite of red is green, right? So these two are complementary colors, right? And so when you put them together next to each other, side by side, they intensify each other. When you have yellow and violet, same thing, right? So blue and green. So whatever is blue and orange. So when they're opposite of each other, they're considered complementary colors. Here we see Twilight in the Wilderness by Frederick Church. And so Church uses complementary colors. And so when you're looking at this painting, it's a really dramatic effect, right? So here he's having the red-orange clouds complement the blue and green evening, right? So he's using two different, the reds and oranges, the blue and greens, and they're complementary colors. So the use of those colors kind of creates this idea, he's trying to have us feel this kind of awe and respect for the American landscape, right? It's supposed to be this really powerful color and just like grandiose, right? It makes us feel like this, wow, look at that landscape, right? And so that's what he's doing with these colors. It's really grabbing our attention. With analogous colors, these are adjacent to each other. So on the color wheel, right? So if you use colors that are in a similar wavelength, then you're going to create colors that create this kind of harmony. They really unify each other, right? So if you're doing the same wavelength, right? So these are next to each other. This would be an analogous color, right? So like yellows and greens, right? Greens and blues. So if they're next to each other, they're considered analogous colors. So in Mary Cassatt's boating party, we see where Cassatt uses this palette of greens, yellows, and blues to create this very harmonious effect, right? It's just very chill, very relaxed. And so that's that kind of thinking of how an artist is thinking about those emotions as well, thinking about these color associations and what colors are going to make you feel relaxed, right? And so this is why we're going to kind of look at these and start thinking about color associations and what the artist might be trying to say with them. So some of the key characteristics of color that you're going to hear a lot are hue, value, chroma, and tone. And so we've talked about value in like black and white drawings. We'll talk about value in color as well. So with hue is really just a classification of a color, right? So as seen in the spectrum, right? So if you think about the spectrum, you have red, yellow, blue, green, orange, violets, right? These are hues. And so we associate the hue with a ideal given color, right? So this is what we're like when we think about red. This is what we're thinking about red as in the spectrum. So in this piece right here, this is King Kui coffin in the shape of a cocoa pod, right? So first of all, we look at it and it's painted with a brilliant, exaggerated mid-hue orange, right? So if you think about the idea of hue, right, it's like what we see in the spectrum, but here he's using a mid-hue, right? So it's not as intense, but it's very exaggerated. And so with these kind of bright colors, right, the artist is actually trying to create this kind of celebratory mood, right? So you think about oranges and it's like they're fun, they're happy, right? And so in Ghana, funerals are celebrated, right? And so that's why it's this color, right? And so then if you go back and you think about this piece here, it is an actual coffin, right? And so a farmer actually commissioned, a cocoa farmer commissioned this piece, and this is what he wanted. And so Kui actually made this for him, right? And so for us, the association of death is always, like in the Western world, it's sad, and so we see darker colors. We see the blacks, the browns, maybe white sometimes, but you know, death is different, and it's not celebrated in the West as it is like in other countries. So it makes sense why the artist would use orange for a coffin. Different properties of value. So we talked about value in kind of these darkness and lightness in drawing, right? So with color, right, we're going to compare the darkness and compared to another hue. So for example, a tint is a color lighter in value than its purest state. So in other words, if you have a red and you put white on it, that's a tint. You're making it lighter in value than its purest state. A shade is a color darker in value. So if you have a red and you add another color to it, darker color, it's going to become darker in value. So this is a good model just kind of to give you an example, right? So this is your hue, red, and then once you add white to it, you're adding white to it, you're making it lighter, 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 right? So these are different values of the red. And then if you put other colors into it, you're going to get a darker value, right? And so yellow, these are your tints, and these are your shades, right? So anything that's making it lighter is a tint. Anything that's making it darker is a shade, right? And so just kind of remember that terminology, right? So that when you are doing the analysis, those are some of the things that you'll talk about when I say, like, how was the value created? It was created with tints and shades, right? And so this is Picasso and Braque. This work is actually just one hue, right? So when you only use one color, it is monochromatic, right? And even though we look at this and we're like, but there's more colors than that, really it's just one color. And then he's adding these tints and shades, right? And so that's how you get those values. So to the blue, we would be adding white to make these lighter, and then to make these darker blues, we add darker colors to the blue and create shades, right? So we've got our tints and we've got our shades. This is Pablo Picasso, the oldest guitarist, right? And so again, if we're thinking about associations, here is a very sad looking painting, right? And so it has this very somber mood. And so by using this color palette, right, these blue, gives us that feeling, right? And so it makes it realistically for us to feel that,